Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I am talking to Neal K, Shah, who bills himself as America's Chief Elder Officer. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. That's where we're going to start. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So Neal, welcome. You have given yourself this, you're a Wall Street hedge fund manager who now calls himself America's Chief Elder Officer, which is big, bold, maybe arrogant. I like it, by the way, so I'm not at all critical. I really want to get into that and what that means.
Sure.
But before we do that, first question for you is this. I want to ask you about something that I discovered about you. So you've got CareYaya, and your wife has got a new business that comes out of her battle with cancer called like Spring and Mulberry. And you guys, you talk about working on it at your kitchen table together at 11 o'clock at night. So you're sitting there with your wife at 11 o'clock at night. What are you guys talking about?
Well, actually, at that point, we had just finished her cancer journey. And, that had been like, for me, two major caregiving journeys that I'd gone through, during my early 30s and my mid 30s. And, for her, obviously, it was a near death experience that lasted several years. So we're kind of like, once, full recovery and remission had been achieved, it was talking about, okay, you're kind of like, you go through this dark period in your life and you're thinking, okay, what can I do now out of this difficult experience? And life is short, and what impact do I want to make in the world? So it was actually, I think the publications like run it as like business. It was really just like, what do we build that business is a vehicle to build something sustaining that can have the impact you want to make? But really, we're back into what impact do we want to make? How do you want to use the rest of your life to do something based on the problems that you've experienced and what you've seen, and, put that creative energy to good work. So.
I'm not sure we're going to have time to get into it because I've got so much stuff I want to talk about, but you really inspired me. I'm going to just sort of leave this hanging, which is probably a terrible thing for a host to do. But I am completely fascinated by the balance between profit motive and change the world motive. I think that right now in senior living, we've got relatively high occupancy. We've got a lot of private equity and REITs who are in the business, and all they care about is money.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually doing damage to the industry. Yeah. But at the same point in time, I also think that you can't ignore margin. So maybe we'll get to that at the end, but I don't.
That's a great, hey, I appreciate the question. And, there's a great research paper on that topic that was literally about margin over mission. And I think it's worth reading. And I think that you're right. There's a delicate balance between the two. And I think in the history of some of these verticals, it was much more mission at the expense of margin or no margin, right? A lot of these industries came out of, faith-based organizations, and maybe it's swung to the extreme over the last like 5 or 6 decades where it's, kind of margin over mission because of private equity involvement and ownership. And, maybe we need to find the right balance. So, unfortunately, we operate on the extreme end of like mission over margin to a fault. But I think that's needed right now.
So I'm really distracted right now because I'm realizing this striped shirt is doing all sorts of weird things on the, I guess it's not so bad when I'm in full screen, but in the little one, it looks really weird. But anyway, so I got to ask you about this Chief Elder Officer. You've given yourself this title. It's big, bold, audacious. Just talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a marketing hack, just kind of like a way, to build awareness where if somebody's quickly skimming your profile, what do you do? And, why is it relevant to their interest? But I also think it's like a little bit of aspirational. If like we are trying to build a movement and reframe how society cares for the aging population. And we think that both from a private sector innovation lens, as well as from a policy lens, the topic merits more attention, more focus. I mean, I hope that one day a role is created in the government for something like this. So I think while initially in the early stages, it was kind of like funny and gimmick, I think eventually it might actually catalyze the change because I view that we have a rapidly aging population. We don't have enough people to care for the aging population. It's the largest population cohort in the country that controls a very large amount of the economic resources of our country. And I think we've completely ill prepared as a society to deal with it. So I think it should require policy focus, government focus, innovation focus, venture capital dollars focus. And I think it has been grossly unfocused on in the last few decades, besides people who are already in it, but I think a lot more people need to be focusing on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. I love the aspirational nature of it. I think there's so much opportunity to make the world a better place as we work on these things. I would love to actually step back and just have you walk through your life journey, right? You started out as a guy who was all focused on making lots of money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you've gone through two major life transitions that have sort of gotten you to where you are. And then after we get there, I want to talk a little bit about, the next sort of, and I think it'll lead naturally into that, but I want to talk about the big problems that you're working on right now. But let's start with your story.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So short version of the life story is, yes, I grew up in a, middle-class background, went to school at University of Pennsylvania, and the finance field. Interestingly, I was actually studying computer science when the dot-com bubble burst. So I shifted my focus to finance because all those employment opportunities dried up. And I was initially just very focused on making money because, came from a lower income family. And I was like, how do I pay off college loans and make sure my parents have a, comfortable retirement? But I was good at it. So I kind of stuck with the industry. And at some point, you're just kind of rolling with the momentum that very quickly in my 20s, by 23, I went to a hedge fund that grew very fast. I was managing a portfolio. I became a partner running a multi-billion-dollar portfolio because of very high returns. The financial crisis happened, and my skill set was literally restructuring and turnarounds. And then I happened to be the only person in the fund with that skill set. So a lot of the capital was allocated to me, achieved very high returns. One of the investors backed me to start my own fund at 31. And I grew that from 10 million to 250 million by the time I was 35. I was managing university endowments, pension funds, charitable foundations, et cetera. And really, I would have stuck to that because I was good at it. That's the thing I knew how to do. And I enjoyed it. It was kind of like a game. But I will say, in analyzing my life back, I'm like a pretty modest person in terms of how I live and, spending wise and all that. I don't have aspirations to like spend a lot of money. So it's just like a game, to some degree. And I was like, okay, as I, accumulate success, I will just fund a lot of science projects that I find are interesting. And then these two major caregiving experiences happened to me. First, caring for my grandfather, 3 years of dementia, where I was really the care coordinator in my family, but really my mom did it. But I had so many interactions with kind of like the home care industry, with getting caregivers, finding support, dealing with dementia, dealing with a kidney failure, then dealing with, terminal cancer and end of life. And after he passed, I was still running my fund, and I became obsessed with the care industry. So I professionally analyzed it for a little over a year. And then my wife became severely ill and went through multi-year cancer battles, during which I was primary caregiver. And, it was just like, it was heartbreaking to see. It was very difficult to experience trying to get care help. I kept taking a lot of sabbaticals for my work to manage her care. And then at some point, I just kind of made a difficult decision to wind down my fund and become the full-time caregiver, because I thought it would have a significant impact on her health outcome, which it did, knock on wood. Proud to say she's, finally had a full recovery and has been in remission for several years. And at that point, I was just like, I'd analyzed my life. And, when you go through these kind of experiences with death, mortality of close loved ones, it sometimes hones in your own thinking of like, what am I actually doing with my life? And, I think it was like maybe a midlife crisis happened in my mid-30s, where I was like, okay, maybe I can use the skills and talent I have to do something that's actually meaningful and make an impact, instead of, not to knock my old career, but you're just kind of moving money around, with no real end goal when you're just purely in the finance field. So I thought that I finally found something I believed in and I'm passionate about, where thankfully my pre-existing skills could be put to good use. And then I was just obsessive about business ideas, how to scale impact, how to build something, how to fund something. And I can get into that in more detail, but I anticipated that there would be a crisis in society, as many other people found themselves in these situations of dementia caregiving, cancer caregiving, basically just taking care of a close loved one through major illness. And there was already workforce shortages that were getting worse. There was an opportunity for technology to bridge the gap. So yeah, I thought, why not just shift my career and do this? And initially I was like, I have a bunch of my savings, so I'll just do it myself. I don't need to worry on any external funders or appeasing anyone, just do it the right way. And I've been actually very grateful. Now I've been running CareYaya for like a little over 3 years. And initially it was just like, I'm just going to build this, and like stubborn of just like in this way with my own funding, just to see the impact I want to make in the world. who cares what happens long term? At least it'll do something now. I've been very blessed where a bunch of other people have seen what we're building and they have stepped up and said, hey, we would like to fund you to accelerate what you're building, which is amazing. Because when we've been able to build it in a very mission-driven way, and I think that this existence of the social impact funding sector maybe wasn't there as much 10 years ago. So I think that's been really cool to observe. And then also just, we've caught a lot of lucky breaks with how the innovations have been perceived and received in the market. So
I love this story so much. And I actually, I think that we are inherently, God built to want to make the world a better place. And so it's not, I mean, intuitively, it doesn't make sense. But I think that from a human connection part, it actually makes sense that there are people out there who have money to invest, who are really turned on by the idea that they can make the world a better place. Let's dig a little bit deeper on this. So what's the big problem that you're solving?
Sure. So the big problem that I've experienced secondhand and firsthand in my grandfather's care and then later my wife's care is a lot of families who are caring for a loved one don't have a good, convenient, affordable, and high quality way to get care help. And I don't mean to offend anyone in the audience, so I'll speak diplomatically, but I've used and been a customer of home care agencies several times in my life. I've also tried to get caregivers on my own. And the way the care economy operates is about a $500 billion plus per year economy. 2/3 of it is in the gray market where people are finding caregivers on their own. They're putting flyers at church. They're going on care.com. They're kind of finding anyone and just like cutting deals on the side. 1/3 is operating through a formal home care agency market. I find in both markets, there's a very mixed user experience. In the home care agency market, cost of care is too high, quality of care is too low, mainly because half the money is not going to the caregiver. So in most major metro areas, they're paying $35 to $40 an hour and the caregiver's getting less than half. So, typically you have a little bit of like, I'm paying top dollar if I need 40 hours a week of help so I can go do my job. I'm looking at 80 grand a year. And then you're like, wait, I'm paying 80 grand a year and you're staffing with these people who are late, no show, oftentimes not even fully paying attention to your loved one. And you feel very guilty. I directly felt this. And as a result, I stepped back from my own career. My mom felt this for my grandfather. She stepped back and left her career. And many people feel this. So it's beyond just a money thing. It's a quality thing. And it's really the business model is broken because the sales and marketing company is keeping half of what you're paying. And the person doing 99% of the work is capturing less than half. So the experience sucks for both sides. And as a result, there's all these caregiver shortages. So I think the problem is high cost, low quality of home-based care and massive caregiver shortage as a result of broken economic structure of the industry. And the second side is for people who are fed up with that, can't afford it, or try to find their own solution, do it yourself. They are interacting in the gray market, and which is 2/3 of the market. Many people are getting great caregivers, but it's a huge pain in the neck. You have to find them yourself. You have to vet them. You have to background check them. If they leave, you have to replace them. So it's a huge pain and friction, but people are doing it. So I thought, okay, there is a good way to build a middle ground solution where you can find great caregivers, connect them seamlessly with people, reduce all the booking, scheduling, vetting, verification, all that through technology, kind of Uberizing the experience, but do it in a way where it's high quality and it's affordable. And then that could serve like a middle population that either can't afford or doesn't want to use the care agencies, but doesn't want to do the whole thing themselves. I thought that was a big value proposition. And long-term, I also thought there is a way to solve the caregiver shortage, which is pay people more and streamline the ability of people who want to do it. And there are massive populations of people that maybe don't want to do 30, 35, 40 hours a week of, full-time permanent caregiving as a career, but might want to do flexible hours, which in our case, I had found were healthcare students. Some of the best caregivers we had through our entire caregiving experiences were pre-medical students, nursing students, people who wanted to go to physical therapy, occupational therapy. I mean, these people are so mission-driven. Like some of them would do it even without money, but money helps. But they're really doing it to get experience because they want to go into future careers like this. They're upwardly mobile. So for them to tolerate the difficulties and the challenges of caregiving for a year, 2 years, 3 years in their lives, when they're 20, 21, 22, and it's tolerable. So I think it's just like, why is this labor pool being completely overlooked? Answer is because they can't do it full time. They need a gig economy, flexible shift solution. And I thought that was like a big opportunity. I have long-term ideas on other labor pools that are also available in the economy that we're not engaging. But I think that, I just think that the home care industry is coming up with a million excuses, but I think they're fixable through business model innovation and technology innovation. And I think that is desperately needed.
So I want to add, I don't know how this fits. You may already have more people talking to you about caregivers than you can serve. So maybe this won't help. But as my viewers, as my readers know, I am the family caregiver for my almost 93-year-old stepfather who has dementia. And he's in a very high-end 6-bed senior living community. He has a huge need for socialization, more than the community can do. Not blaming the community. There's only so much for the amount of money and the people they've got staffing. And so I have a friend of mine who is semi-retired. And he comes in 2 to 3 hours a week, 2 to 3 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day, 2 to 3 days a week. Sometimes he takes them out to eat, and he provides this interaction. I'm paying him a lot of money. We have financial resources to be able to do that. But I have to believe there are many other people who are living in senior living communities who need that extra companion. And they're not doing care. They're just, they're talking, in his case, they're talking football, and they're going out to eat waffles. And it's just the human reaction. And he wouldn't do it for caregiver wages. Of course, I'm a gray market guy, so I'm just I'm just sending him Venmo money. He gets 100% of what I meant. Hey, and on the flip side, early on, we did some traveling where we needed to bring in some agency, and frankly, the experience, the caregiving part of it was really good. I mean, they took care of him. They found other things to do, like, loading the dishwasher and emptying it and mopping the floors. But they didn't have the education. And mostly they were new immigrants. And so there were language challenges in order to be able to carry on conversations. And so they met the care needs when we were out of town. We needed someone to be there, but they didn't meet the social interaction. So I really love this a lot.
No, thank you. And I'm glad you pointed that out. There's a great book I would highly recommend to people, which is by Emily Kenway out of the UK called Who Cares? The Crisis of Caregiving. And one of the interesting things in the book, I mean, she has like so many insights, I can't even remember them all. But one of the interesting things that made me think about her book, based on what you said, is the caregiving industry in the US and generally globally extremely overemphasizes task completion of care. But like the broader point is the most important aspect of care, that as perceived by the person receiving the care and the family members, is the relational aspect of care. And I think that is grossly de-emphasized in kind of this commoditization of what is the care work. It's not just, did they do XYZ task? It's how did the person feel? And did the person feel cared for by somebody who cares about them? And I think that not just somebody who's there doing a job and a series of tasks. And I think that is grossly underemphasized in the kind of like caregiving and home. So I think that is, to your point and your observation, I mean, I think that's a home run. I think many people need that part for their own mental health, their well-being, their even acceptance of getting care. And we find that probably the number one selling point for CareYaya, where we have all these healthcare, younger students doing care for older adults, is actually somebody negotiating with their mom or dad saying, hey, let me get you some care, who is resisting agencies or is churning through caregivers. It's like, oh, here's a local healthcare student. Let's say if you're in DC, it's like a Georgetown pre-medical student that's going to come hang out with you and, help you, keep you company. But it's really a two-sided relationship. It's almost mentorship. I'm helping this young person talk about their life, talk about my life. And I think that people really need that relational aspect of care, not just the task completion. And I think it makes a world of a difference in the person receiving the care and the family member.
Yeah. And I would argue that as you're looking to expand your caregiver pool, as you are on this companion services, there are a lot of people who are young retirees who would be outstanding to do maybe not to do, if there's real care that needs to be done, but on the companion side of things would be really amazing. Talk to me about, you've got this kind of, I mean, you obviously love putting great bold names on. So you first off, America's Chief Elder Officer, and then you've got this name CareYaya. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it came from actually a lot of brainstorming of like, how can we have something positive, fun, playful, and kind of like futuristic. So, it's just the word ya twice, so when you say it, it's like positive. Two, it means grandmother in Greek. but it also means caregiver in Hindi and Swahili and Thai. So it has kind of like this double meaning. And then 3, it's an acronym for You Are Your Advocate, which I believe is the future of self-directed caregiving. So yeah, I just thought it had like positive connotations, was cool to say, techie sounding, but also positive and aspirational, as opposed to like alluding to kind of like old age or death or, negative things. So I thought, yeah, why not? It sounds like a cool,
Yeah. No, I like it a lot. I've got all this signature stuff that I do when I go to conferences. So I wear all these Chuck Taylor shoes, and right now for my microphone, I use a kitchen spoon with a microphone clipped onto it. And so I actually think those kind of catchy things are really important. So talk to me a little bit about the role of CareYaya. Are you working in senior living? How do you view senior living?
I love senior living, and we're working in senior living. And actually, one of my big strategic goals for 2026, in case anyone's listening, is please reach out to me. I'm looking to do more collaborations in senior living. And here's why. Currently, we're running a mostly consumer-oriented caregiving platform where individual people, adult children of aging parents, hear about us, come to CareYaya, book care through us, and then help mom or dad at home. Over time, and especially in the last year, I've noticed many people who have mom and dad, or even spouses in independent living, in assisted living, in memory care. Many people want kind of supplemental one-on-one care. So the family members are booking, but we have started indirectly now partnering with the senior living operators. And I think there's a couple of things I'm finding through that, which are awesome. Believe it or not, by the way, Steve, we have an excess of care workforce. So in some ways, I feel like a moron because I have unlocked these 50,000 plus college students across the country in doing this. But another way, because we don't do any advertising, all the marketing is just like organic, whatever content we create on social media. In a lot of cities, we have thousands of students and maybe a fraction of that of families booking. So I've thought the senior living operators would be a good way to collaborate with us because we have abundance of workforce and we could partner with them. But beyond that, the students are not just providing affordable care. By the way, I forgot to mention that in all markets, CareYaya, compared to a home care agency that's $35 to $40 an hour, CareYaya is $20. So it's way more affordable. But beyond that, we have a lot of NIH grant funding to explicitly collaborate with the senior living industry, to see what's going on in the senior living setting when people get care from students, to see how we can bring digital tools and technology to engage older adults. So we've been working on a lot of stuff around, like we recently just launched Yaya Bear, which was funded by a National Institute on Aging grant, which is a voice AI powered soft like teddy bear companion that has life story conversations with older adults. But really it's something that a college student brings. They both engage with it, talk about it, and over time it captures somebody's life story and creates an end kind of like narrated autobiography. So there's a lot of like opportunity. What I realized in the senior living side is to have the students be a conduit for bringing technology and doing unique activities to engage the older adults, which I think takes it from just beyond, hey, the caregiver is there to keep somebody safe or help them eat. So yeah, I'm explicitly looking for partnerships with the senior living industry. And in a lot of those cases, collaborating with industry to approach NIH, because we have unlocked a stream of NIH grant funding to research how can we operationalize this workforce. The moonshot would be to figure out a way to directly empower the senior living industry to work with us on the workforce side, because we are growing by leaps and bounds on the workforce, and going individually one-on-one to families is only one way to tackle it. But I think there might be other ways to integrate more directly with senior living. So yeah, if anyone wants to collaborate, brainstorm, whether it's current workforce or future innovations or some of the tech products we've been building, I would love to have conversations, because I think
so. I've got some great ideas for you, probably better suited to a private conversation than live stream. So I'm not going to touch on that, but we should talk. I've got some ideas for 100%. You. So one of the things that I like to ask guests is, and I'm trying to be conscious of the clock here because I know you've got a hard stop at the top of the hour. But as you look at the senior living industry, what would you do if you turned your sights on senior living rather than the home care agency? What would you do to make it better?
Okay, fine. This is a totally, thanks for asking the question, because I have a lot of like random ideas in the back of my mind. If somebody wants to do this, I'm down, but I don't have the bandwidth. So I'd love to partner with somebody. I actually think within senior living, there's an opportunity. Okay. You know how like this big venture capital firm called General Catalyst had been building for last decade, a bunch of software startups to sell into hospitals to kind of revolutionize the hospital experience with technology. ultimately they just raised $2 billion and bought a big hospital system because they're like, okay, I'm tired of building the tech to sell into it. I'm just going to buy a hospital and then I'm going to reverse engineering all the tech. I think there's a similar opportunity, which I would love to partner on. But hey, if somebody wants to steal the idea, please go do it, because I just like to see innovation in the world. I'd love to be part of it if possible, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it myself. I would love to go literally buy or build one senior living community and then run it backwards, where you build and integrate all the tech you think will improve the experience and build a tech native senior living community yourself, instead of being sold to by all these technology startups who are trying to, sell you and price the software. I feel like if you run a tech native facility like that and it works well and then you scale it, I think that is a massive, massive home run of an opportunity. Somebody's going to do it. Yeah, reach out if you want to. But I think that is a open playing field, because I think it's one thing to, and this is, I'm saying this the same thing to the home care agencies. All these home care agencies are, let me incorporate a little bit of booking and scheduling technology, payments technology. But it's like when the tech vendor is selling to you, that's not the same as you say, I'm going to run this like a tech firm. And I think that if there was a senior living operator out there, or somebody interested in teaming up, to say, let us go buy and then run this like at heart, we are building all the tech and figuring out, I think that is a huge open field. Because one thing when you're doing it in-house versus when somebody's building for you and selling for you piecemeal. So so that's my one idea.
Great. Cool. Okay, I have two more quick questions, and I think we're going to be out of time. First question is this: are you all over the country? What's your geographic range?
We're in about 15 states. We're kind of where the big universities are. So to rattle off the top of my head, I mean, our home base is Raleigh-Durham, so we're at UNC Chapel Hill, Duke University. But we're also at Washington, D.C. area, Georgetown, George Washington, a few others, Boston, New York, Harvard, Tufts, Northeastern, NYU, Columbia, et cetera. We're big in LA, San Francisco, parts of Texas, parts of Florida. But we're probably kind of hopscotching around the country, where we're at 30 of the top 50 universities in the country, and we're gradually expanding to more. But it's really where there are major, good quality universities with more than 10,000 students. It's likely we have a presence there. And if we don't, reach out to us and we can build one. So that's the geographic footprint. Eventually I'll expand, but I've observed the quality of the care is phenomenally high at any of the top 50 universities, because they have their own admission standards. And of those populations, we're only engaging with students who want to pursue graduate school and future clinical career. So there's so much incentive alignment to show up on time, do a good job, get good ratings. Most of the students doing CareYaya are hitting us up for letters of recommendation to medical school, physician assistant school, nurse practitioner program. So I find that beyond just the affordability of the care, the quality is very high, because for the students, it's a pathway program to future clinical careers. That's
cool. And the question I was going to ask you, though, is going to have to remain, because we're about out of time.
Okay.
We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to just have you talk a little bit about how people find you, how people work with you, and with that, we'll be done.
Okay, yeah. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm at Neal, Neal, middle initial K, and the last name Shah. So I'm happy to chat. If you want to email me, it's Neal, Neal, at CareYaya.org, C-A-R-E. Thanks, you have it on the screen. And then, I'm happy to chat with anyone. I'm always looking to brainstorm with people. I love building new projects. I think I also love people who have a specific deep industry knowledge, because I came from outside the industry. So I have ideas, but you want to validate it with people who have expertise. And I think if anyone wants to take on that Moonshot project, that has been a dream of mine. I don't have the bandwidth to pull it off myself, but I think there's a big opportunity in senior living to build a tech native senior living community. And I think that the two essays I would recommend, or things I would recommend to people to read on that, is just Software is Eating the World, the Mark Andreessen essay from 10 years ago, but also Ask Your Developer by Jeff Lawson, who founded Twilio. But I think both of those they were instrumental to me in saying, if you want to do home care, don't just do home care and then add tech to it. Start from first principles and redesign the whole experience using technology. And I think that is just, you build something totally different. And I think that opportunity exists within senior living. So I'd love to partner with somebody to do it.
Neal, this is great. I have about an hour's more worth of questions. We'll have to do this again. Okay. But great conversation. Jada, thanks so much for producing in the background. We will be back on Friday with a great leadership guest. So I'm excited about that. And Neal, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks.